Okay. I think, yep, there we go. Things are checking in. 55 episodes we're at. That's a lot.
Goes by so fast,
It
so
does go
fast.
by fast. Um, Man. And, yeah, so how are things going? I mean, it's the 18th, a couple days before a new administration comes in. Not really to talk politics, but like there's going to be a big shift definitely occurring
Yeah,
worldwide after this weekend.
yeah.
So,
I wish it wasn't such a big shift, Like I'm
mhm.
excited for it, but it'd be nice if things were just so much more in the realm of not swinging so crazy either direction that we could just be like normal, like, oh yeah, we got a new one. Let's see what happens
Yeah.
versus, oh my God, thank God we got a new one.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think that it's going to be really fun to see what happens in the entertainment industry over the next 12 months because we're already seeing some unexpected characters kissing the ring already. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be a very, very pivotal year for Hollywood this year.
Oh, well, I mean, the change started 2 years ago, so we're going to start seeing some significant portions of it this year. I do know that,
Well, I'm not saying just that. I mean, I think a lot of eyes have been opened because of how the fires have been handled
oh,
in
yeah, yeah.
LA. And there's been, did you see I don't know I don't want to say oligarchy, but the three uh what did he call him? Anyway,
The
Trump called
ambassadors to
Stallone.
Hollywood.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
ambassadors. Thank you. I couldn't think of that. Yeah, and I'm like, this is very interesting to see what's happening. So yeah, it's going to be cool. I think it's going to be cool. I don't think it's going to be worse, which is good. I think that the real ray of sunshine for a lot of people uh, are, at least in the nerddom where I live, is to see if it ever happens. I'm not saying we know because everyone's always assumed, but when Kathleen Kennedy finally leaves. Like that's the only chance I think that Star Wars and Lucasfilm has, and that's just fresh in my mind because I just finished playing the new Indiana Jones game,
Mm.
which I wasn't gonna play because I have no. The fourth movie really turned me off from Indiana Jones. I still have the original three movies and Steelbook, but to me everything else is after that's just dumb, right? And I'm telling you, this game is so fantastic. It is so good. It captures the ambiance, the fun, the passion of everything Indiana so well that I was there so many times where I caught myself laughing or my jaw dropped, and it's all around the Great Circle, and it's about the Nephilim, the giants, and it's so good script. I mean, it could have been such a fantastic movie. And instead, it's even better. You get to play it as a game, and you go from the Vatican, you go to Egypt, you go to Himalayas. Like, it's really great. It's quintessential Indiana Jones. And I just sent it after I got done. The credits were rolling, and I was just like, "Gosh, dang! This just shows that how much we've missed this game. First of all, this game came 10 years too late. But on top of that, like it just shows you how good a new Indiana Jones film could have been. And shockingly, it came out and it was fantastic. So I will say that. I will say that to the internet. Like, yes, I agree. The new Indiana Jones game is worth the money. It's great.
Well, there's a pretty good recommendation right then and there.
Sorry, I just
No,
felt
that's
passionate about
that's cool, man.
that.
Like, listen, listen, if you can find joy in the entertainment that comes out, I mean, more power to you. I've been trying to catch up with some other shows because NBC finally has a good show on their docket with St. Denis Medical, which it's got the Office format, but it's surprisingly good. It's endearing, has heart, has comedy. It's pretty much found its legs at this point, having I think 7 or 8 episodes in already,
I
and
need
no
to
one's
jump on
talking
it.
about it. Yeah,
Yeah, I saw the trailer for it, 4 months ago when they first dropped it, and
yeah.
I was like, eh. I was very like, whatever. But then I saw Chato talking about it, and he loved it, and I was like, man, maybe I need to give this a chance. So I'm gonna watch it. I'm gonna see if I like it, and yeah, if I love Parks and Rec and I love The Office, I love that style.
Hmm.
So yeah, I'm interested to see that. What about movies? Have you watched anything good this last week?
No, I haven't seen anything like recent, like that was good this last week. I mean, with the great David Lynch having passed away,
Hmm.
just last night, me and my girlfriend we sat down and rewatched Mulholland Drive, which a fantastic, fun, uh, quirky film. Um, I saw some old classics. I saw this classic from 1955 called Conquest of Space, which has impressive special effects for a 1955 film based off of a novel. We recorded a bonus episode, for Scripts on Saturdays, which can be found on the Patreon in a few weeks. Where I watched a movie that is very similar that was made over a decade ago. That is very similar to a script that sold for over $2 million recently.
Oh, wow.
And me and the Jake from 52 Movies a Year discussed that script. So be on the lookout for that on the Patreon, guys. I'm going to be seeing Best Man tomorrow. I got my tickets. Me and the girlfriend are going to go tomorrow afternoon, kind of a late matinee thing.
Cool.
Check it out. Not familiar with the subject of the film, but we've seen a couple of interesting new trailers pop up recently. And one of them was really well done. I don't know if it was done by the proper marketing firm or if some fan did it, but it was on one of the social media platforms my girlfriend showed me. And it impressed me just by that alone. So I'm like, okay, yeah, let's go check it out. Let's see if it actually pays off, or if it's, just another biopic that kind of, has that lackluster aftertaste to it. So
is it weird that I know it's biopic, but ever since I was a young lad, when I read it, I heard biopic.
Well, if you're an optometrist, that would make sense. But
so now, years after I learned, like 20 years after I learned the proper way, my reflex is, oh, no, it's biopic. No, it's not.
Yeah.
So I got a funny text. I got to tell you, my girlfriend is on the southern tip of Chile right now. She flew out a day and a half ago. And she is going to Antarctica with her dad, and they're spending about 10 days down there, and they're going to be able to say, hey, we've been on all 7 continents. It's pretty awesome. Mm-hmm. I'm worried about her because she's at the edge of the world, right, to me. I'm like, that's not safe. There's a lot of winds down there. It's their summer, which ironically makes it, or coincidentally, sorry, it makes it warmer there than it is where I'm at, where I'm at
Southern
in Idaho.
Hemisphere, opposite temperatures.
Yeah, which I thought was funny. But she just sent me a text, and this is why I'm bringing this up. And she said this, all right, see if you get where she's going here. She said, my dad looked at the shirt I was wearing, which I bought her for her birthday last year. She said, and asked me when I went to Cabot Cove, Maine. I said at least once a week in the 80s and 90s. Do you know where Cabot Cove, Maine is in our entertainment industry? Do you know that one, Script?
It's not ringing a bell. But,
I'll give you a clue.
It's like...
I'll give you a clue. The title of the series is Blank She Wrote.
Oh, Murder, She Wrote. Yeah.
Yes, that's where she lives. That's where Jessica Lange, right, lives.
Jessica Fletcher, played by
Jessica Fletcher. Thank you. And so her dad saw that and thought it was a real place. So I just thought that was hilarious. That she's like, so she responded to her dad and she says, "Yeah, I said I visited at least once a week in the 80s and 90s." Because she loves that show. My girlfriend's got an old soul, and she loves Murder, She Wrote. So I bought her the whole set. I just thought that was funny, kind of pertinent to some, entertainment stuff. And then the other thing I was going to tell you was last night, because I'm batching it now for a week, just me and the Aussie Doodle. And I made him sit with me last night, and we watched for the first time Venom 3. Have you seen that one?
The Last Dance, is it, or something? Yeah.
Yes, The Last Dance. And I gotta say, I thought the first one was fine. It was good. It had its moments. Second one, I was like, nah, not that into. This one was better. This was better than the second one. I laughed a few times. It definitely had its stupid moments, but it had some really good one-liners and stuff in it. So I thought it was fun, just for a good movie. I'd say it's worth the rent at least. I enjoyed it. But I kind of, Venom's always been one of my favorite characters, so I kind of give him a little bit of leeway just for the fun of seeing him on screen,
No, I completely get that. I mean, a lot of people listen. Venom was, I think, the best of the Sony films that came out last year. So there's definitely something to that. With that being said, I think all of our audio is checked out, and we got nice and revved up for today's script. So let's get this show on the road. Welcome to Scripts on Saturdays, the only screenplay review show on the interwebs, discussing scripts both professional and amateur, circulating around Hollywood, giving you, the TV and movie-going audience, a behind-the-scenes and inside track on what writers are pushing and what producers are buying. I'm your host, the Script Doctor, and joining me this week is TJ Mack of Mac Media. Glad to have you back here, sir. Happy New Year. We got a script today.
We have a great one, and thank you for that intro. Yes, I'm excited for tonight's show because it's always nice. You always have more energy when it's a script that you enjoy. So yeah, I'm excited.
So I'm glad that we are able to talk about that because it's got some elements to it that are familiar, and it's got a pace to it that I think will spawn some good conversation. What we'll be talking about tonight, listeners, is the screenplay titled Howl. This ranked 37th on last year's blacklist, the 2024 blacklist, with 13 votes. It is written by Madison Vanderberg, and the logline is as follows. All hell breaks loose when a famous but notoriously troubled actor announces on a talk show that in less than an hour, he'll turn into a werewolf, all on live TV. TJ, please share with us the synopsis.
All right, synopsis is Frankie, a new PA for a cheesy late-night talk show, is thrust into chaos on her first day when guest Evan Stone claims he'll transform into a werewolf at 12:23 a.m. As the clock ticks down, Frankie navigates a night of horror at the talk show, leaving us wondering if Evan's claims are real, and if so, will she survive the madness?
So, today I learned Evan Stone is the name of an adult performer, because I was hanging.
Let me just look that up real fast.
Sure, go for it. Because I was like earlier this afternoon, I was covering over the script again, just kind of reading it on my laptop, and my buddy was over, and my girlfriend was over, and we were all just kind of like shooting the breeze, and we were talking scripts, and I said, "Oh, I'm reading this one, Howl," and they said, "Well, what's it about?" I'm like, "Oh, there's this crazy kind of like actor celebrity named Evan Stone who claims that he's going to be a werewolf," and they say, "Whoa, hold on a minute. What do you mean, celebrity Evan Stone?" And I said, "Well, that's the name that this writer used," and they proceeded to tell me, both of them told me that Evan Stone is apparently a pretty big deal in the adult entertainment industry. Now, this was what fascinated me. So my girlfriend knows this because her roommate in college used to watch adult films with her boyfriend, and they left one on in the living room when they went to do their own thing. And so when she came back from class, she saw one of those films, and the reason that she watched part of it was because the star was actually telling jokes and made her laugh. And she's like, "I can't believe this is an adult film." And then she learned who that guy was, and then I quizzed her on other parts of the filmography. She failed because I did a quick IMDb search. And yes, IMDb has adult stars on there. But my other buddy, who is definitely more inclined to watch adult films than myself or any woman out there, went on to say that, yeah, he is this. And the reason that he knows who he is because he had a pervy math teacher that was a dead ringer for the guy. When he was in high school. I'm just like, this is really messed up. So
that'd be off-putting. Every time you do math, you're like scarred for the rest of your life.
Well, I mean, he didn't see the adult films until after he graduated high school because, we're relatively the same age. And apparently this guy didn't start doing this stuff until we were.
Well, teachers don't get paid a lot, so it could have been the same guy.
Well, I mean, it's from a different country, so I don't think so. At least I hope not. But
that's funny though.
But it's just weird. But I will say this: if you're coming up with character names, try not to use those that are actually real within another industry, because it is going to cause people to think or have imagery of something else other than it. Now, fortunately for myself, I just learned this after I'd already read the script, so I have a different face, different everything when it comes to who this guy is in the story. But I can
I didn't look it up. I'm going to keep with my original image in my head. I'm good.
Yeah, I don't want that to be tainted. But I will say this: I'm certain there's other people who have read this and they know who this Evan Stone guy is, and that may make the script enjoyable for them, or it might make them second guess it. I don't know. But I thought that was kind of funny because apparently Evan Stone is not a stage name. It's the guy's actual name too. So it's even more complicated than that.
Well, the good news is if this ever got picked up, a name's easy to change. So
yes, it is. And
by the way, before we move too far forward, I
Sure.
felt like I can't remember every script last year, but I would say from the ones I remember, this should have done better. This should have been top 15, in my opinion.
Oh, okay, cool, cool. Well, I mean, one of the things that I found fascinating is that this movie opens up with a quote, or script opens up with a quote from Britney Spears, "The Woman in
Yeah.
Me."
Yeah, lyrics. Yeah, yeah. I thought that was a nice little hook too. I was like, interesting. Okay, where are we going here?
Yeah, so I mean, it's all. The thing is that on the surface, you think, oh, is this kind of going to be an allegorical thing? Like, is the log line true? Will this guy actually turn into a werewolf, or is he just kind of? Is it something with regards to celebrity and abuse and drug habits and all that type of stuff? Well, yes and no to some degree. It's pretty odd. One thing that kind
Yeah,
of
do you want me to read that line real quick?
sure, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, share with the audience what the
So,
line is.
yeah, so the line was, I felt something dark come over my body. I felt myself turning almost like a werewolf into a bad person. And it's from, yeah, Britney Spears, The Woman in Me. And just to clarify, this is written by Madison Vanderberg this week.
Yep.
And you said Madison could go either way. It's a boy or girl name, but you said this is a female. This is a woman that wrote this, correct?
Well, I don't know many men named Madison, but I'm sure there's some out there.
Yeah.
But no,
Yeah.
but Madison Vanderberg, she doesn't have much to her resume on the public side of things. She worked for Holly Scoop, which was some type of TV series. I'm not too familiar with it. I guess it's like an entertainment news covering channel. And then she's one of the creators and actors and writers of a short film called Two Girls Go to Da Club. Um,
Duck Club.
Da Club, like DA Club.
Got it. Got it. Yeah.
And part of me suspects that this script is inspired by most likely her numerous production assistant gigs that she has had.
Yeah, I
over the
got that.
past
I got that note
decade.
too throughout it. Like this was someone who's been there, like really gets deep into the weeds of stuff that you wouldn't normally know from the outside looking in. So I definitely got that vibe that she's writing from experience here.
Yes, and you know what? That definitely helped a lot with this script because there were some voices to it. Now, what's interesting is that this is all takes place in New York, so we're looking at something that's similar to, say, Rockefeller Center as a hosting building for this all, but it's not quite the same. It is, but it isn't. They're trying to blur the lines there. Specifically with regards to, in this building, you've got reality shows on this floor, you've got talk shows on this floor, you've got dramas on this floor, etc., etc. That's how they kind of all lay it out. The script itself, after that quote, opens on a brownstone in New York, and there's a lot of descriptive camera movement in here, which I'm not the biggest fan of, but I understand why the writer is throwing it in there because she wants to establish a mood. And that mood is that we're going to be going through this brownstone house, and we go down the stairs to like a basement, to a steel door, and we open it up, and then a goat with 3 legs, one recently having been severed with blood splitting everywhere, just escapes and just rushes all over through the home. And
Can I just say one thing?
yeah,
Growing up in the country around a lot of sheep, goats, cows, horses, everything. Goats are cute, but they're kind of dicks. So when I saw this imagery, I kind of chuckled a little bit. I was like, this is a crazy open. I love it. So yeah, this was fun. I like this opening.
well, and then the opening then goes into something that really struck with me, something I'd already seen, which was Saturday Night. Like last year, the movie Saturday Night by Jason Reitman debuted. This opening hits it just like that. It's like a real time, organized chaos of television production for a live TV show. So it has a lot of familiarity going there. And the show in question that is centered on this script is called Anything Can Happen with Ace Lane, which it sounds like a very head up your butt type of show title, and is apparently heavily inspired.
I kind of pictured. Oh, sorry. I kind of pictured. I know this doesn't quite fit, but my initial just picturing was like The Soup, like something that's kind of like chaotic and crazy but fun. Like they break the fourth wall all the time. It's just kind of dumb and silly. You know what I mean? It's not like The Tonight Show, right? With say Jay Leno. It's not like that. It felt more like something that would be on cable access that was just more fun and just kind of less professional. It's kind of, but I know that's not really a talk show, but you know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah. Well, the script goes out of its way to actually highlight that this show is essentially inspired by What Happens, Watch What Happens Live with Andy Cohen, which is a show I never heard of before.
Me neither.
and I don't think anyone should be feel embarrassed that they never heard of such a show before, because I ended up seeing a clip of it. I'm like, I am glad I've never heard of this show before. This is terrible. But we end up using this framework to introduce ourselves to our protagonist, who's named Frankie. She's in her 20s. This is her first type of production assistant job here. And it's...
Frankie Goes to Hollywood vibe. Did you pick up on that? That's what I got.
A little bit. I think that was the intention here. And
I love the name, though. I love the name. I think it's great. I loved her character. The way we get introduced to her is felt very natural. And
we have
she's overwhelmed but excited, and like people are just treating her like, "Hey, get in here, get go." You know, they don't have time to be empathetic for her plight of being the new person. They're like, the clock is ticking. If you've ever worked in production or in studios or anything with live performances, this is how it is. You just sink or swim, and so yeah, I felt like, and again, this is probably Madison writing from stuff she went through. So I loved it. I thought this was all very good.
Yeah, very unprofessional stuff she went through, because when you get a PA job, you usually get an onboarding and orientation before you get thrown onto your first show. I know I've done this many times. It's usually, and it's a basic thing. It's like you meet the people that you're supposed to be meeting with and working with briefly, but enough to get the basic pleasantries and understand the task at hand. And then you find out, okay, tomorrow morning, 5 a.m., this is where you are, let's go. And then you jump into it. In this case here, the writer does a good job highlighting that this is a very unprofessional show, pretending to be a professional one. Because you have your first PA, new girl coming in. Now, this script actually has two characters with names that have a masculine approach to it. So you have Frankie, which is abbreviated for Francesca, and then you have Sam, abbreviated for Samantha. So you have Frankie and Sam, two female characters with masculine names in there. This is an old trick hat that people used to use in the early aughts. In order to be edgy, they wanted to give a female character their more masculine counterpart. So you have Sam, Alex, Frankie, Billy for Wilma, and stuff like that, just to kind of push certain tropes here and there. So this script has that as here. Frankie is supposed to be our protagonist, and but the thing is, we don't stick with her that much in the first act. But from that introduction, and also from I say the first 10 or 15 pages, TJ, what did you find stuck out with you on this script, this setup, this world that we're brought into?
So I went to it really took me back to I did like a 1-week trip down to Marina Del Rey. I had a friend who's a retired producer, and got us in. We got into the green room to a few of the late night shows, and it felt like I was kind of transported back there. It was really cool to be able to fall back on that and go, oh yeah, this is what I can totally see this area. I know how everything's dark paint, dark colors. There's not a lot of bright lights until you get out to where the cameras are. Like, I felt like I was there, and she just nails this aesthetic. I really felt pulled into this world instantly, and I could see how viewers could be like, oh my God, this is insane. It's like controlled chaos, right?
Yeah.
And I love that. I love coming into this with that energy right after we just see that little teaser of that basement at that brownstone, right?
And this is all running in tandem with the fact that there's a little dog kind of running around the set as well.
Oh yeah, the dog, of course, classic, right? Like, you've got this little puppy. I can't remember what breed it was, but a small dog running around, and then she gets accused of kidnapping it because she was trying to rescue this poor dog that she thought was lost, and it turns out it belongs to the drama queen, Desperate Housewives type character. Was Lala? Was that her name?
Lala, yeah, the Desperate Housewives, like late 20s, early 30s Desperate Housewives character who's in a show that is airing, a recorded show that's airing right before their live show. She did something rather embarrassing on that episode and doesn't want to talk about it. But the showrunner of the show and the host definitely do. Now,
yeah,
I thought
Samantha's the showrunner. I don't know if we clarified that, but yes. Samantha's the showrunner. Ronnie was her second in command. I'm trying to remember who Ronnie was.
Oh no, Ronnie is like the animal guy. So he's
the
backup.
Guy, right.
He's the backup guest that a lot of these shows have. Now, one thing that's kind of interesting is that yes, talk shows do have showrunners. They basically help out. They work together closely with the host to basically establish the format of what the show is going to be, the guests, the questions, all that type of stuff. However, in this situation here, you find out that Samantha, as a showrunner, Doesn't actually do anything other than essentially book guests because she doesn't write anything. Because it's watch what happens type of thing. It's all improvised. They have their bullet points of what they want to talk about. So I'm looking at this like, yeah, this is a really horribly run show. They have a showrunner who actually doesn't write any material for the show. Like, it's just a waste. And there's no staff writers or anything else. There's lots of assistants. Yeah. There's a social media expert. Yeah.
So you're coming at it from your experience, like this isn't how it should be organized and ran. For someone like me who knows very little about it, I'm looking at it like, okay, so we quickly establish that she's gone through a divorce or is going through a divorce. She sleeps in her office. So we quickly see that like her whole life is this show, right? This is everything to her at this point. And as someone who, I worked in radio for 6 years. And I could look back at that and go, yeah, there's times where you think you're more important and what you're doing is far more important than it really is in the whole scheme of the world, right? Of everything else. And I just saw this in her. I'm like, yeah, she's written really well. Like she's obsessed about this show because it's her life raft. It gives her whole life meaning. And and that's bad. That's bad. From a psychological standpoint, your job should never, anything in your life, no one thing should be everything to you, right? You need to spread it around to be healthy. And so, but this sets up. And I knew this. I'm like, this is setting up something later, and it does in Sam's character, which is important later in the third act. Yeah, I loved all of this. I love her style of writing. I love her energy. She breaks everything up into nice small pieces. There's no walls of text that I have to wade through and be like, oh God, I got to get through this description or this whatever.
Right. The writer keeps it slim, and fast.
Yeah, and I really like that. So yeah, what are your thoughts on her style of writing?
I like the organization of it, but one of the things that bugs me is there's novelistic aspects peppered throughout this whole thing where it's like, here's the line. Here's like, as we wonder who this Evan Stone is, that's got Ace's panties in a bunch. We smash two. It's like, you don't need to say this as we wonder who this Evan Stone is. It's like, use your line to set up your montage. Don't use your action line, your descriptive line, your scene description to convey personal thoughts or anything of that nature. Like there's a lot of that throughout the script.
That is your expertise, and I love that because I don't know that that's a faux pas. Like you shouldn't do that. Like I just read it and it was great. Like I think a lot of the scripts we've read over the last year, it's been fun learning this from scratch, right? Because I'm like the new guy. You've been doing this for how long have you been doing this now? 15 years more? How long? Have you been doing this
19 years professionally, almost 25 years in total.
And like 100 years in your heart.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't know about that.
So I had to look up what pre-lap meant when we saw that on page 5. I'm like, what's pre-lap? So I looked that up and learned, that's when the audio cuts in before we cut away to the actual scene where the audio comes in.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, cool. So I learned something new from this script. Yeah. So I don't know where to go next. This script is great. I can see all the characters. I didn't get confused. Sometimes you have so many characters that you're like, who's who? And on some of that is just because the characters don't even have names. We have like, I'm trying to think of it, sexy lady or whatever, the drunk guy. And
there's an audience member. There's the warm-up guy. There's a lot of characters in this, but some of them are kept really simple. So there's Tommy, the talent producer. There's Stacy, the social producer. There's Noah, the PA. We don't get a last name for Frankie. We have Lala D'Amore, so she gets a last name, and we have Anna Lopez, who is Evan's recent ex-girlfriend. And
I'm trying to find it. We had one. Isn't there one guy that he's the one that's like fighting people towards the end, and he's like handsome dude or something. Is just he doesn't have a name. He's just called like handsome dude or something. Man.
Yeah, there's this one guy who's like he's like a model who comes in and like the male model. Yeah, he comes in,
male model.
gives drinks and stuff, and he's very foolish. Like this. The other part too is like this script.
Yeah.
This script is either a very, very dry comedy or doesn't know what it wants to be. So
yeah, and I don't know when you want to get into that. I felt like when this was all said and done, I'm like, this to me feels like a comedy, 80% comedy, 20% horror. Like this was great. I loved it. It was fun. I guess it all depends on how you want to shoot it and what you're going for. But it's definitely not a horror movie. Like this isn't American Werewolf in London, right? That's not what's happening here.
No.
So yeah, I felt like this could be a fantastic film if done well, dude. Like, it's everything. All the parts are here. It
Well,
really
it's
is. This
kind
could
of
be
like a
fun.
mix between Jason Reitman's Saturday Night and the David Dashalman movie Late Night with the Devil, right? Because but it's not, but it's more shot, or it's more described as it would be filmed more like Saturday Night Live, but has more of that Late Night with the Devil aspect, where you got the TV
Yeah.
host, and all of a sudden this person says something live on television that they're going to do, and you're like, oh, okay, well, we're going to run with this, I guess. And oddly enough, both
Yeah.
take place in the 70s. This one here does not. This is very much a current day. We got cell phones, you got social media stuff. One of the things that's actually kind of interesting is that there's a subtle message about the difference between captivated audience and and then audience captured. So, for instance, in this case here, this is a show that does streaming, and it's on television network and streaming and television, all that stuff. And they go live, and they care very much about the ratings, and they alter their show based on the interactions that they get, which is not necessarily the best thing you want, because that puts you into, and a buddy of mine was telling me this earlier today, because he had to actually give a speech to some people on this matter, but he was talking about how something that captivates an audience is usually inspiring, and something that is captured by an audience is usually just affirmation. It just reinforces an existing opinion or bias, and to be captured by an audience is actually bad for your career artistically, but to be someone that can captivate an audience is how you can transcend what you're trying to do. And this script really kind of speaks to that, because as we get further along, we actually see these people essentially chasing an audience for something that they have more interest in, as opposed to them finding something and saying, hey, look at this, and look at how we present this, and look at how awesome this is, and look at what we're able to give you from this subject. It's basically just kind of goes back to why you have so many, especially with the late night hosts, why they're background music, and it's all passive entertainment, passive quote entertainment versus engaging stuff. And I kind of liked the narrative of that here. It was all done very, very subtly, and it kind of gets peppered in here and there, because we do cut away to like a wine mom type of person. She's like sitting in her apartment with a roommate, and she's got like wine o'clock artwork, and she's drinking tons of wine, watching these Desperate Housewives shows and whatnot. So we kind of bounce between her
living through someone else, living that
vicariously
star obsession life.
Yeah.
Which we even see, and I won't spoil it, but the very last page of the script, there's a message. There's a message to this film, and I think that's another reason I love it. Is it's not just content. It actually goes so far as to say, hey, maybe there's something wrong with the audience if they're actually entertained by this garbage. And I love that. I love that about this. That was another thing, another layer to this, that it all kind of harmonized together, And so, and we see that. We see a few times where we cut away to the audience. We see someone in their house watching the show and how they're reacting. And I think there's at least 3 times in the script where that happens. But
the thing is that they're very specific about the type of audience that they're commenting on, right? So they're talking about, okay, who's the type? Well, it's basically like single women who live with roommates drinking wine in their off hours, listening to gossip TV. Like, that's the audience they're kind of making fun of, especially because we later go on back to Stacy, the social producer, who's like reading off social media posts regarding the episode, and they're all vapid things. And it's like, why would you want to chase the vapid people that are interested into this when you want to go after the ones that probably spend real money and actually do something with their lives, and the vast majority of the people, as opposed to those niche targets that are loud and interactive, and all the Kim Kardashian, Kylie Jenner fans, and
all right. So can we pause for a sec? Let's go for just for a second. I'd like to go on a philosophical note here and talk to you, have a quick side discussion on this topic. Okay.
Right.
Because you've worked in the industry for a long time, and I feel like I worked in radio. So that was close enough to Hollywood that I'm like, I saw the smoke and mirrors. I saw the huge and fragile egos you have to deal with. And I'm like, I can't imagine this at the scale in Hollywood. Can't even, but I can definitely fathom it just from the taste I got dealing with it for the 6 years that I worked in radio. And I look at it this way: because of those things, I like it, because in my 20s, the early 20s, I experienced all of that. And it taught me how to put it in context of real life, right? Like to not be like this is everything,
Hmm.
and to look at these celebrities and see them for what they are. They're just people that have a whole team around them that make them look the way they do. But at the end of the day, they're just people. Stop it. Stop worshiping these people. But on the other note, you don't want to be so above it, right? That you're like, yeah, that you don't have any fun with the entertainment industry either, right? So there's a middle ground where it's like, yeah, I love this is where I'm at. I love the media. I love the good stuff, right? I
Hmm.
love the IPs. I love certain characters. I love these things that vibe with me. Whether it's and the same thing for books. But at the end of the day, it's just entertainment, right? I don't worship it. But then you see people, and you could go down the road of people that are collectors, right? And they have like a whole basement filled with Star Wars stuff. Now, I would never do that, and that to
Hey,
me,
I
that's
got
too
some of
much
that
of an
stuff too.
obsession.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but there are people that's fine. I don't judge them for doing it. That's
Yeah.
fine. But
Yeah.
to me, I'm like, that's too much, right? And I think that's kind of numbers game would prove that too. Like that's an exception to the rule. Most people wouldn't do that. But my point here on the philosophical end of it is, at what point does the tipping point, I should say, where society is going too far, right? We're way past that now. I think we could all say that with celebrity worship and things down that road, or even when I really started seeing people becoming famous just for being famous, like certain Jenners. It blows my mind that this is a thing, right? That this is not just that you can make a living off it, but that you can make millions, if not billions, off of it. And that to me, it makes me sad, right? I look at that and I go, this makes me sad that our society is in a state that enough eyes would be on this, that it's financially, someone could financially gain from this thing. And so I guess my question is this to you, as someone who worked so close in the industry, how do you have a healthy approach to it and go, yeah, I'm passionate and I'm into it, but only to this level? It's not going to obsess. I'm not going to obsess over it. It's not going to derail my life, whatever. I'm not going to be these people that watch it to such a degree that did you see, this is a great example. The woman who got conned out of like 850 grand because she thought Brad Pitt was going to marry her. Did you see that whole
Yeah, I
thing that
saw
went
that.
down? So that type of obsession, right? So how do you keep your head on straight and keep your feet grounded and not get caught up in the smoke and mirrors of Hollywood?
Well, oddly enough, as hard as it might seem to believe, there is not a lot of craziness in that nature on the creation side of things in Hollywood. People like a lot of people in Hollywood recognize that this is a job. It's not the same as a 9 to 5er, but it is a job, and it comes with a certain level of balance to it. So I mean, it's not all red carpets. It's not all parties. It's not all huge flash. I've seen actors who, you read in the trades that they got $20 million for a movie, but you see them at the CVS searching their pocket for the right change to buy like a bottle of like hand sanitizer or something. There's a lot of normalcy with them. I mean, when I had the pleasure of working with Brent Spiner when he was in Toronto for a short time on a project, we had a conversation about the difference between American and Canadian currency because we have more coins than they do. And we used to have bills up until like 97, and now we have our dollar, and our $2 is replaced with coins. So, and then he's a very normal person with regards to that. And this is a guy who's made a fair amount of money on Star Trek and also with the feature films and also with his other character acting stuff, but he still acts. And you realize, yeah, even though he's got those big bucks, you also have to remember he lives in California. A lot of that money is gone before he even gets it in expenses and taxes and publicists
Agents
and
and all that
agents
other
and
stuff.
everything,
Yeah.
right? So even though, and then the other part too is a lot of smarter actors, when they get those bigger paydays, they start up production companies. So a guy like Robert Downey Jr. gets $50 million to do a movie. Well, he doesn't see that $50 million. After the taxes are all done, it goes to his company, and that company pays for people that help find Robert Downey Jr. other projects to invest in and work on and perform on, so that he still has a career, because it's not every studio is knocking on his door saying, hey, we want you for our movie. Sometimes there's people that have their own stuff that they're circulating around that are interesting, and Robert says, hey, I want to expand my range a bit, so I might pursue this type of role, and I might use my production company to help co-finance that project to get it off the ground so I can perform and get whatever's inside of him artistically out on the screen, and at the same time form a relationship, build a network with the people working on this project. Lots of bigger actors do that. So they don't have the means, many of them, to hoard their money when they get those big paydays, so they end up burning out of it pretty quickly if they happen to live in California. Now, if they live in another state or another country, and the way that they're paid is done through that, they circumvent a whole bunch of those fees, and they're able to have a nice, cushy living if they don't
So
get
hold on,
another piece of work.
let's look at this from a different angle. So I'm kind of curious to hear your take on this. So what about the fans, right? The viewers, the consumers. I hate that word, but that's what they are, especially in context of this script. What are the what are the I don't want to say ramifications, I guess, of a society that puts so much time and energy into such crappy content, right? Because we're going down that road with the streaming wars, right? So much stuff, so much of our favorite shows and IPs and stuff are just content. They're not even good anymore, right? They don't have to pass any type of tests. They just get made. Looking at you, Disney. So, like, what are we going to pull out of this nosedive? Is it saying more about society as a whole that we're even accepting this stuff instead of everyone, the majority, or more, rejecting this stuff? That it's just going to keep on growing in such a low bar, or are we going to pull out of the nosedive? Like, what do you think is going to happen?
Well, I mean, it goes back to what the point of this script was trying to make, is that if all you give people is this level of content, then only the best of that variation is going to rise to the top. And that's, I mean, it's essentially a form of reality television. And when you take a look at some of the stuff that is content, does it not feel a little bit like the laziness of reality television, with the convolution of the drama done for the sake of, spicing up the content itself? I mean, it kind of plays into a very high school narrative, which is, oh, isn't the drama and the gossip and the conspiracies more fascinating than the actual, like, fantasy of the idea or the reality of it? Excuse me, in some cases. It comes down to if the studios themselves, which, again, are by and large, the majority of them are operated by people that are looking at data and trying to chase a trend, as opposed to what makes entertainment, from everything from the short stories to novels, books, television, film, even video games. Well, what makes them interesting is that they show us something we haven't really seen before, but recognize there's a familiarity to it, and it engages us, and it allows us to actually cherish a little bit about it. And sometimes it might inspire you to get up off your butt and do something at the same time. But does a talk show like this one here in the screenplay, with Ace, whatever his name is, Ace Lane, does that really do anything, or is it really just white noise to sort of make you look like, well, at least my life isn't that bad, or maybe it will make you think, oh, I wish I had that type of life. But
Yeah.
where's the other stories are the ones that are in between. So, like, I'm in a situation like that, and that character did something to change it, and I think I might have an opportunity to do that, so I'm going to keep a lookout for those opportunities, or try and figure out a way to make my own. When you don't have people crafting those stories and promoting those stories at the higher frequency, by comparison, then you end up conditioning your audience to just do the very thing that they want, not criticize, not think about it, just turn off your brain, be the hypno slug that from Futurama, and just watch and consume, and give up your money.
Hypnotoad.
Hypnotoad, that's the one,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, and then what makes it even worse is we now know for sure that there are some studios making content from ground zero, knowing that it's content put in front of people that are already on their phones.
Oh,
Like,
yeah,
they do
Netflix,
not really care.
the tech companies more so than anything. Netflix, Amazon.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, not so much Apple Plus, but Apple doesn't do much to advertise the stuff that they make, and they actually are making some pretty decent content. So that's the contrast here. Like, this script is focused on that. It's like it's a trash show, essentially. It's gossip. It's exploitation of the guests for framing up humiliation for the sake of quote unquote entertainment. It is.
But the people, but hold on, and this is the other half of it, because we got to look at the whole picture.
Right.
The people that are getting humiliated are getting paid, and they're there knowing that's what they're there for. So everyone's in on it. Everyone deserves what they got coming, and I think that's why this really jived with me, is because I hate the superficiality of a lot of the stuff. I love the entertainment industry as a whole, but I hate how it gets exploited. I hate how it gets worshipped too much sometimes. Like, I
That
don't think
just
we should hate
comes
actors like they did back in the day, but I think that we should. Honestly, I think that the writers should be getting paid more than the actors, hands down. Because without the actors, you have nothing to put on the screen.
true,
That's
but at
my
the same
opinion.
time, the face is what brings people to, or at least used to bring people to the yard. The other part too is writers, with few exceptions, are not very good at the circuit and promoting. And it's like, it's a solitary job for most part. Like I do a lot of my writing alone, and I'm always fortunate whenever I get a writing partner because I love bouncing off the ideas. And it's a very kind of, I mean, it's still a solitary environment, but it's also like you get to learn about that writing partner in a way like and you form friendships pretty quick. And also at the same time, if things are in sync, even though you have different experiences, those friendships can last for years. Like I've got writing partners that I've known for 15, 16 years. One of my buddies who was telling me about who Evan Stone was is a writing partner I met in New York City, back in 2014, 2015.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is the core concept, everything that gets put on screen doesn't exist until it exists in a writer's head first and gets put to page. And
Ideally,
so
yeah.
so that's the birth of the the creature and the foundation of what that house gets built on. So it's the most important part. Without it, you have nothing. It's the beginning and the foundation. And so I feel like writers are way underpaid most of the time. Of course, there's terrible writers out there. She-Hulk, I'm looking at you. So there are exceptions to the rule, but I'm saying in general, it's kind of like on a football team, right? Quarterback gets all the credit, but yet you got your linemen that are doing without they're doing their jobs, then you wouldn't have a quarterback be able to do anything, but they get all the, all the press. And so, yeah, I feel like that's a big injustice that's done in TV and film. Yeah, anyway, we should probably get back to the script. I'm just saying that, like, I feel like this captures that world very well and the superficiality of it, right?
Hmm.
And you've worked on a lot of shows. You're saying this is clearly a very unprofessionally run show, but there are ones that are run very professionally. I think of like late night talk shows, like some of them probably, or even SNL would be a good example. It has got to be pretty chaotic like this sometimes when they do it. Like last second, they're like, let's do this, let's do that, right? To make it really good and juice it up. It's got to be somewhat controlled chaos in some of those shows, I would imagine. Maybe not every Saturday night, but some Saturday
Well,
nights.
I mean, oddly enough, I never got the chance to work on Saturday night, but I was at Rockefeller Center while they were putting on some episodes for a while, and I got to see how the sausage is made. And it's nowhere near as chaotic as what's depicted in Saturday Night, the movie, but there's a lot of, it's very busy, but everything is organized and everybody is incredibly good at their jobs. Like that's one of the things when you're on a professional film set, there's an energy there where everybody knows what to do, why they're doing it, how they're going to do it, and if a problem occurs, there's at least 5 or 6 people that have a solution ready to go because they've either experienced that problem before and know how to solve it, or they just know the intricacies of their job so well that when something new does come along, they know how to get around it so that they can make their day and do the job. It's incredibly impressive. And the other part too is like it comes with experience and really good training. And when you see that, you just wish those practices could be adopted and applied to every other industry there is on the planet. Because if it were, things would be running so much smoother today than you'd ever see. And it really comes down to, it is merit based. Like it's not like working in film production, although there are definitely a lot of stupid people in it in various other departments in various other areas. I would not say in any type of actual crew like catering or production crew itself you'd ever find a level of incompetence, because if you can't make it within the first few days, you're done. And you go out. It's not like the Army, which has an 89 IQ threshold. Like if you fall before 89 IQ, below 89 IQ, you can't join, which means that you're too dumb to be cannon fodder in the worst case of scenarios. Right, like
Yeah.
like that. The exact opposite is in Hollywood, which is like if you can't pick this up, and these jobs are they're simple on the surface, but they require practice and experience in order to get really really good at. But you
Yeah,
can
and
learn
I
it.
would imagine from my experience is you got to be a good critical thinker, because when those things do come up, the weird stuff, you got to be able to think on your feet, and you got to have enough common sense to know how to approach them, because you don't have a lot of time to react. You've got
Well, I
to get
mean,
stuff
it's
done.
like someone who say is a spot welder, right? A spot welder is going to know exactly when they see a break in a pipe or something metal, they're going to know the best way to try and fix that up or patch that up, and they're going to know how long that patch is going to last before that section has to be replaced. Like, that comes with experience, and it's basic knowledge that you could probably read and memorize, and that will get you started, but doing it over and over and over again makes you the expert. And the way that the training is for a lot of IATSE members and stuff, it's on the job, and it's pretty neck deep, but there's always people looking out for you. And if you can play along into that and you get on the same page as everybody, you keep getting more work and you keep working more. And then your experience grows and you're seeing stuff from other departments and you're seeing how they all work together and you're understanding the responsibilities. And you know, oh, if I screw up, it's going to have a ripple effect across all these other areas. So I better not screw up. And if I do, I have to be utterly honest in what mistake I made so that the other people that know how that mistake was made can actually help me solve that problem that I caused through my own negligence. And then I will learn not to repeat that problem again. And then, and again, it is very merit based. So you live up to it, you stick, you can stay for, it's a full career job. Like, you go into it as long as you are able to physically do it. Whereas other jobs, they'll give you 100 strikes against you. And yet you'll still be able to keep it because it's not about your performance. It's about you're a body filling a position. And that's all that matters, is that you're just there to, field a call or write a paper or do something. And they don't actually care about what level of quality you have. And that's a shame, because not only is that a disservice to the company, it's a disservice to the person that you've hired, because you should be trying to make them the best employee you can have.
Agreed. It's agreed. And that's the other half of the story a lot of people neglect to talk about. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. It's true.
But the ironic part is that when you get into, say, the smaller tier or independent circle of things, you have a whole bunch of people that want to be the best in the business. That's why they're doing it. But some of them haven't gotten any experience or haven't found a way to get into some of those professional things at those lower levels to learn the skills. So they go do it themselves, and they have to learn all those mistakes the hard way. And that is what we're seeing here. We've got Sam, who is the showrunner, who's not really a showrunner in any sense of the word. She's in her 40s or 50s. She's getting a divorce, and she's living in the studio in a sleeping bag. And this job is the only thing of value in her life right now. So she is the embodiment of that joke of a 50-year-old guy who works in the bathroom on a studio at a studio tour, and the person says, "Do you really want to be a bathroom attendant at a studio tour?" And the guy says, "What, and quit show business?" Like, that's what essentially what Sam is a parallel of.
Okay, I get it. Yeah,
and then
it's sad because here's the thing: did you like anybody outside of Frankie in the script? Was there any characters that you're like, I like that person?
No. I mean, that's, I think, done deliberate.
Me neither. And I agree. I think it was. I mean, our Mr. Werewolf, you kind of feel bad for him to a degree, but we never get into the deep dive of exactly how it happened, right? Like, we do kind of, but not really.
Well, it happens during a blackout, because Evan Stone, the fictional Evan Stone in this story, is kind of like a River Phoenix type who didn't pass away young tragically, kind of pulled out before that. And what's weird is that they don't quite establish what the age is, but there's a lot of blurred lines around this, because Evan is an actor who'd been in the early aughts. So he's been around for 20 odd years at least. And so I'm thinking, okay, so he's got to be in his mid to late 40s, but there's just something around him that makes it seem like he's in his late 20s, early 30s.
Yeah, doesn't she say that? I thought she said he was in his late 20s. That's in my head too.
Which doesn't make sense if he's like an actor from the early aughts, unless he was a child actor. But what type of child actor who would probably be 7 or 8 at this time is getting into drugs, alcohol, parties, and women before puberty hits? Like,
ask Corey Feldman. I don't know. It happens, I think. So.
Well, Corey Feldman didn't get any of that type of stuff until he was like 14 or 15. So, puberty had already occurred.
Okay. Sorry, my mistake.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we see Sam's a wreck in her life, but yet she's good at her job. But that's bad. That's a bad thing, because her job is to be running this really crappy show, right?
Yeah.
And then we have Ace, who's your stereotypical insecure, wondering how many more days are left on the calendar where he's even going to continue to even have this show. At some point, we established that the show is in trouble. It's on the verge, and so that's building the stakes, which is what a good writer does, right? Like it
Oh
makes
yeah.
this night of werewolfness that much more important and critical for the show's survival. But on the other note, on the other end of it, Ace also does still have some common sense. There's quite a few times during this night where he's like he nopes out, right, and then he kind of gets pulled back in, usually by Sam.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was a lot of good conflict. I don't feel like there was any just sort of dumb, stupid conflict that went nowhere. Everything kind of fell into place. I feel like this script got rewritten a lot and got polished because it feels that way to me. It feels like a very well polished script.
I think the dialogue
So
got reworked a lot because every line here you can actually feel what the motivation is behind the character. So with Ace, he's just trying to have a good show. He's upset that Evan hasn't shown up yet, and he doesn't really want to worry about the animal guy because then it makes him feel like he's not a valuable, quote unquote content creator.
well, and they said Evan's like the biggest star, the biggest get that they've ever got for the
Right.
show.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
So it's a huge deal. It'd be like I don't know, Robert Downey coming to your
Channel
your
3,
to,
TV show.
to like
yeah.
Wayne's World, right? Like,
Yeah.
hey, we got this big, huge star coming to this tiny show. Not quite to that extreme, but it's the similar vibe, right? Where they're just like, dude, this is a big deal. And so then he finally shows up like 1 second in time, like just before, and then when he does come on stage, he announces that at 12:23 he's gonna turn into a werewolf.
Yeah.
And just drops that in Ace's lap,
Well,
and Ace is
it's
like,
not that it's not only that he announces that, he comes in with a silver lockbox as well. And he,
Oh, yeah,
he
the
won't
gun.
let
I totally
anyone
forgot.
touch it.
Yeah.
But he basically
Yeah.
says, yeah, I'm here to promote this movie, but I don't really want to talk about it. And what I really want to get off my chest is that, yes, at midnight, at 12:23 tonight, during the full moon, I will turn into a wolf. And this goes viral. Ace thinks this is absurd, doesn't really want to play into it. He's trying to tell jokes, really bad ones, mind you. And Lala D'Amour is feeling like she's being pushed aside, which she kind of feels okay about
which she is, because she's not anywhere near as big a star, so she should have seen this coming, but still hurts her feelings.
But it hurts her feelings on top of the fact that they talk about what she did on her reality show, which she didn't want to talk about
Which was use a champagne bottle as a weapon against her own
Production team.
her own
Yeah.
production team. Yeah. So yeah, that was a bad look. But
So there's
I mean,
that,
sounds-
and then Evan also didn't want to talk about his ex-girlfriend or the movie. But again, Ace is the type of guy who's like, I'm going to find out what they don't want to talk about, and I'm going to put them on the spot because that makes for good television, which is a very skeevy and unethical thing to do. And what's funny is that there's been people who did that with Blake Lively, and I'm not defending Blake Lively or her actions, but I will say, if you're interviewing a talent and they say, hey, this is a sensitive subject, I don't really want to talk about it because I'm here to do this, you as the journalist should, especially if you're on the promotional circuit, should abide by that. It reminds me of the incident with Robert Downey Jr. where this one guy just kept on pushing him on his drug abuse and alcoholism, and Robbie's got up and left.
What do we?
Yeah.
He said no. He says I still remember that. He goes, "What are we doing here? What are we doing here?"
Yeah.
He says that to the guy, and you could just see, yeah, what was that idiot doing, And
He was trying to make a name for himself by cracking into RDJ.
Stars have to put up with that crap. I remember that. Was it a French guy on the red carpet with Tom Cruise sprayed him in the face with the mic that had water? It was like a little water gun. Shot him in the face with it.
I think
you remember that?
Yeah.
So yeah, they have to put up with crap like that for sure.
Well, I mean, the trades are not your friend. I'll put it, they can be informative on the movie, and they can be helpful with getting the word out. But remember, the trades are essentially the New York tabloids at a higher scale, talking gossip and BS just to get you to buy their paper.
I would subtext that with the mainstream ones are, because they're pretty much in lockstep with the major studios. But that's a whole nother podcast right there to talk about that.
I don't know about them being in lockstep, because there's some articles that have been out where I'm like, I don't think the studio is very happy with this at all.
Well, but the majority of the time, you're like, oh, look how wonderful Kathleen Kennedy is, right? Look how good this show was.
That's different, because those are assignment gigs that are ordered by the trades on behalf of the studio. Most of them don't.
Because they want to keep their access,
the
right?
trades don't want to be in lockstep with the studios because there's more drama, there's more circulation when you expose something that's happening negatively with the studios, or some sort of rumor or a competition between two actors over a role, something of that nature. That's historically how it's been. I mean, when I got into Hollywood, the one thing I was always says like, well, what's your favorite trade? And they're like, we hate them all, but we read them all because if they say something stupid or they expose something that we don't want known, or if they say a lie, we can either sue them or counter with their own press release. And yeah, I mean, it's basically you learned like you have to be vigilant of most of the trades because they have their own agenda, which is to sell papers. And they will say anything they can, and they will make sure that's as vetted as best as possible so that they can avoid lawsuits as well, with very few exceptions ever making it out. So, yeah, it's kind of skeevy in that regard, but that's what Ace is, that type who is the whole, oh, I learned this about you. Well, I'm going to press that button for you because I want the reaction, because the reaction garners more views and it feeds into the audience that appeals to that type of stuff.
Right. That's the game they play Scream or Splash on the show, which is exactly that, right? Like he's asking them questions
that they already know the truth to, and they're trying to see, well, will the talent be honest or will they lie? And if they lie, they get squirted in the face, and if they are telling the truth, they have to scream. And that's one of the gimmicks, and they actually end up soaking Lala D'Amour because she claims that she hooked up with some celebrity, which she didn't, apparently. And we as an audience don't know that. So we just, I guess, have to take everybody's word for it. And it's meant to be framed as a joke, and it's done okay. And then the other part is like, oh yeah, they go to Evan, they ask him a question, and he corrects it because he tells the truth. But Ace is like, no, you got to scream, and Evan's like, and he's like, no, come on, do better than that, and eventually goes into like a roar, and that kind of shakes the entire audience because it's like, whoa, that's kind of bestial. It's not really normal.
Yeah. And he gets sick of the stupid game and he says, I just said I'm a werewolf. Ask me about it. You have 1 hour. Like he's trying to cut through all this stupid like showbiz razzle dazzle garbage. And you see that he's there for a sincere reason. And it's like, as a viewer, you're like, okay, we're on board way before the people in this stupid studio are. like we're like, dude, he's being serious. That's why this movie exists. That's why I showed up and sat in this seat. So it's kind of annoying to see everyone in the studio being like, he's just being a crazy celebrity. And you're kind of at this point, I'm like thinking, yeah, I want to get to the werewolf part. Like, let's go, you know.
And it does take a while to get there because, again, the majority of the script, at least from page 15, when Evan shows up to, I would say, 56, 57, we barely get anything of Frankie at all.
Yeah, she's gone. She's barely there. I don't want to skip ahead, but yeah, she's just kind of, she's around doing stuff, but you don't really see her directly.
Well, she's been assigned to actually tend to Evan's needs, but Evan doesn't need anything other than the fact to stay sober because apparently he's been living a clean life for a while.
Yeah, and they have a moment. You want to talk about the moment that they have when he talks about her name? Sure. So when they meet, he asks her name. She says Frankie, and he's like short for Francesca, or what was the this is where the Latin came in, right?
Yeah, I can't remember. It was like Francisca or something that he said first, and she's like, no, Francesca. And then he says something in what the writer thinks is perfect Latin, but I was reading it and my Latin is rusty, but even when I use some translators, I'm like, yeah, there's no grammar to this properly. But essentially he was trying to say like a tall, beautiful woman of sorts with empathy and grace.
Yeah, which you see something that direct, and I'm okay with it in this context. I'm not mocking it, but it's like foreshadowing, right? Like you see it, it's so clear right there. And I was like, okay, but it wasn't totally forced foreshadowing. It was just kind of subtle in there. And so I was okay with it. I like it. Give me some foreshadowing. I know I'm more alert to foreshadowing than your average Joe is, but yeah, we have this little moment where they meet and he kind of focuses in on her, treats her like a human, and she appreciated that. And so that was their first little that was their introduction.
Yeah, their introduction and their connection. Like one of the things that kind of wins him over with her is that when she offers him a drink, he's like, no, I'm sober. She's like, I know, and then has like water and Diet Coke there, and he sees that and he's like, oh, thank you so much. This is exactly, yes, thank you. And you're like, okay, cool, good character moment. Well done. I'm glad that they showed us that in action with a little bit of dialogue instead of what we've seen for other parts of the script where the scene description is also part narration of the story, which again, your screenplay is not a novel. Your screenplay is your blueprint to the final product. Like, your director is the narrator kind of reading the script to you as the audience, and the actors are channeling that voice, that direction, that representation of the character through them for you to enjoy. And the moment you start, as a writer, start putting in details that are unfilmable is the moment you realize, oh, great, you're not selling this on the merits of the script. You're selling this by conveying to a reader that has probably got a terrible education and terrible level of intelligence what they need to know so that they can tell their boss what this story is about, instead of them having the potential
Okay, but
to actually do it.
sorry. So devil's advocate though, but
Sure.
you and I have done like a dozen scripts together now, and there's plenty of other script writers that do this exact same thing. Because
Yeah,
I've even
it's a growing
confronted you about
trend,
it.
which I think is
I'm
really
like,
tragic.
yeah, because there's been times where I'm like, okay, but look right here. They just said that this person thought this in italics, but you can't put their thoughts on screen. So what is this for? And you had to explain to me, like, yeah, well, the director or whoever would have to kind of come in and figure out how to convey that, or they'd alter it a little bit. But for reading the script, it's good. It's for you as a reader, and that doesn't convey to the screen, is what you're saying, right? Like
Oh no, it does.
as a
It doesn't at all. I mean, it's a cheap cop out, because what it also shows you is that, oh, so the people that are reading the script now, it has now been revealed to the rest of the industry that the people reading the script are idiots, and you have to basically spoon feed them the information so that they can tell their boss what the story is about, so that the boss can pretend to read it, but then put the story into production based on their summaries. And then when the movie is actually made, they watch it and they go, yep, I knew this was a hit when I read the script, and they never read the script. And
ugh, that all just sounds so shallow and sick. I
it
hate
is,
it.
because there's areas of the industry that are like that. Like, even one of my buddies who I got to meet with again after a few years because of the pandemic, we talked about how, like, that's a huge frustrating aspect where he's like, I need my readers to read the script. And then, because when they give him the coverage and he reads the coverage, he then goes and reads the script himself. And if the coverage lines up with the script, he knows that that's a good reader and that's someone he wants to keep on staff. And if it doesn't, he gets rid of them. And I knew this when we first started forming our friendship, and I started sending him stuff. Like, he basically would say, yeah, the scripts that you wrote, we had two people that gave me coverage for it. They were completely different. One of them actually read your script, the other one didn't, and I fired them because I can't have someone that doesn't know how to read a screenplay, and it's just giving me crap. And oddly enough, that person that was fired was the type of hire that would have pushed forward a DEI type of thing. And
Good riddance. Bye-bye.
and that's
Don't
what
let
you
the door
see.
hit you where the Lord split you. Yeah, that's good. That makes me have hope that there's still, people doing that, because getting into a position like that, it should be on merit, and you should be working your ass off to have that opportunity to be there to do those things. You should not be half-assing that.
Well, story analyst is like an entry-level job into production, right? So if you're good at it, you will rise up quickly. But
Yeah.
if you're bad at it, well, you'll stay where you are for a while, and then eventually you'll either find some other job where someone will promote you based on, your experience somewhere else, and they'll never check to see how good you were at it. They'll just say, oh, you worked for this studio as a story analyst for 8 months. Now I'm hiring you as a story analyst supervisor, so you're the person above the story analyst because you got 8 months experience with them. They don't really check to see if you're good or not. They just care, like, did you start at this time? Did you end at this time? Okay, you've got more experience than the other people. Go supervise them, filter out the coverage and whatnot. And part of the reason why a whole lot of Hollywood had a really terrible decade is because the people on the front line were pushing up stuff that fit their agenda, as opposed to what they were supposed to do, which is find the scripts that meet all the actual check boxes, the good check boxes that the studios had, which is as an engaging story. Do the characters resonate with a potential audience? Does it make sense all the way through? If it doesn't make sense, what are the areas for improvement? What type of market could this appeal to? Like, all those types of aspects that are not the stuff that we had seen, especially over on Disney's side of things, for a while.
Do you think that the whole throwing money at streaming shows just to create content, do you think that exacerbated that whole issue? Because there's just so much money going everywhere, like people just didn't care.
True, but it also didn't mean that the quality intentionally went down. It's more like when you have so much stuff that you have to put out and there's only so many people to do it, because they're being split across multiple projects, that's where the quality fails. It's not intentionally meant to fail. It just happens that way. Like Greg Berlanti is a perfect example. He started his Arrowverse, and he was an acolyte of the Gotham Miller duo from Smallville. And so he's like, I'm going to try and do that, but I'm not just going to do one show. I'm going to try and do 6 or 7. And he ended up doing like 12 or 15, not just in the superhero side, but also the other stuff. And as soon as he started getting more than 2 shows, the quality of those shows declined because, well, you cannot summarize your duties over multiple productions. You actually have to be there to keep the quality in check. That's why you don't have a whole lot of legendary producers out there who had 10 to 15 shows running at the same time. And Taylor Sheridan is falling into this as well now, because the quality of his shows are starting to decline, and because he's got so many of them in the pipeline. And it's like, no, unless you're like the studio head of the network, that makes sense that you're running all those shows, because you're delegating the other producers to make sure that they're good, and they're only focusing on 1 or 2 television series that's under their belt, not 5 to 10. And if they're doing 5 to 10, there's not enough hours in the day for them to give each one the attention it needs within the schedule it's supposed to have, and you go nuts. Now here in this script, you've got 1 showrunner, 1 host, 1 team. They're giving all their attention, and it's still a garbage show. So, and then the reason that they're clinging on to Evan and his proclamation of turning into a werewolf at 12:23 a.m. is because they've got nothing else. And that's the other part too. That's the one thing that I enjoyed about this script, is like, you literally they're when they're given a golden goose, they know how to run, they know how to hold on to it, and they run with it, but they're not even thinking about tomorrow's show. They're like, well, what are we going to do tomorrow?
Yeah.
And that's the biggest problem when you have those types of productions. Like, oh, I have this great thing, it's going viral, great, wonderful. Okay, what am I doing tomorrow? I don't know. I got to hope and pray that some sort of external thing occurs that I can seize onto and market for the show, for the next show that I'm doing. And that is no way to run a talk show like this.
Yeah. And this goose has teeth and claws, which makes a whole nother level of weird of problems for them to try to handle, too.
This is where we kind of get into the weaker part of the script, because once the announcement is done, now we have this ticking clock, which is great. But the fact of the matter is, like, well, what are they going to do in between that time? And all they got are like commercial breaks and then discussions about, is it real or is it not? Oh, the driver knows. Okay, let's go get the driver. Well, he went back to Evan's house. Great. So we're going to send the 2 PAs to go to Evan's house to try and find the driver so we can confirm this story. And now we're on this side quest.
Right, which I was okay with that, but the timing, I had to kind of suspend disbelief, because I'm like, just trying to get around town. Like, how close does he live?
Well,
because
they're in Manhattan.
The show's an hour, right?
Yeah, the show's an hour, so they'll be driving through Manhattan after midnight, which, I mean, I lived there for a couple of years, like off and on.
Yeah,
traffic is crazy in Manhattan all the time. It's better. It's a 2x9 mile island, essentially. It's easier and faster to walk.
Right. I agree. I spent a week in New York, so I have a little bit of experience, and I'm like, yeah, just driving is a nightmare. But I was okay suspending that disbelief, because it's getting us to where we need to go.
I was fine with the premise of, go to the house and get the guy. The problem is that they spent way too much time there. It felt like padding.
So what happens is they get there, Frankie and the other
Noah, the
whatever.
PA. Yep.
Noah, yeah. They get there. They get inside. It was unlocked, right? They just walked in.
It was an unlocked door. They get inside. And there's no one there.
She goes downstairs. She starts to see blood on the walls, and then she opens up a door and she sees a goat, and then she opens up a recycling bin or something. Yeah,
compost freezer of sorts.
Composter, yeah. And inside of that was all these goat parts and stuff.
Goat corpses and stuff. So first question I'm like is, how easy is it to get a goat into New York City? A live one. And then second of all, why did we spend about 15 pages? Because you summarized it in a very effective way that the script does not, because there's a whole lot of dialogue between Noah and Frankie about the job and about, is this real or not? And then when they get in, they're like, there's nobody here. And then Frankie finds this stuff and she's trying to convince Noah for it. He's just like, nah, I'm staying out here for now until, crap hits the fan. And then when Frankie finally sees it, now she's like, she gets on the phone with Sam and she's been saying, like, how'd you been answering your phones? Look at your text. This is what I've been sending you. And Sam gets freaked out.
It's real. Yeah.
Sam gets freaked out because, she's like, it's real, but instead of doing anything about it, she's like, this is going to be exactly what we need to keep the show alive.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I didn't feel like we lingered too long there. I didn't have that same take as you, but, for her to get all the way across town and then back again, because then that's what Frankie does, right? Like,
Yep.
she's like, well, so she gets a goat.
And she leaves Noah there. So, like, she just drives off, leaving him at the house.
Well, Noah didn't want to go back, right? Didn't he
Right.
want to stay?
Well,
So, yeah, so she takes the
on the
goat.
fence because he doesn't know. He thinks it's all a lie, just like Ace does. And when we find out that maybe it's real, or at least there's some violent action and animal abuse has been going on at Evan's place.
Yeah, that's a whole nother like bunch of issues down the road.
Because while this is happening, there's this other aspect where the show decides to get one of their PAs, another PA, to dress up in a furry wolf mascot and then hide behind Evan and then mock him as he's talking about his story.
As he's telling his story. And yeah, so meanwhile, Frankie, so on the side quest, Frankie gets the goat, gets in the van. She's on her way back to the studio. She's going to bring a goat to pacify our werewolf is her plan, because Sam's definitely not listening to her. Right. So she's going to try and save the day. If I was her my first day on the job and I saw that stuff in that basement, I would have walked out of his front door and just kept on walking.
Like, I am going home.
Yeah, but she's got a good heart and she wants to try and help all those poor people that are at the studio. And so Frankie is our hero, right? Like, so I'm like, okay, I'm okay with it. This is fun. This is interesting. This is conflict. What happens next, right? Mm-hmm. So again, I was still on board. I didn't feel like it dragged too much here because we kept cutting back to the studio. It was bouncing back and forth, which was keeping the momentum going on the edits. So I was okay with all of that. In fact, there's so much that happens so fast. I don't think we're even telling everything in perfect order at this point, but that's okay.
It is kind of jumbled because there is a lot of stuff going on. But eventually gets into Ace asking about the mystery box, and Evan says, "Okay, well, this is what happens. I was in the Netherlands. I found these practicing witches. They crafted for me a silver bullet with this that's compatible with this old revolver. And what I want, Ace Lane, is when I turn, I want you to put me down.
I want you to kill me."
And Ace is like, what? He's like, and then Evan just freaks out. He's like, put a bullet in the gun, kill the wolf with the silver bullet. Come on, man. That's what you want. Keep up with me. And he's just freaking out with him. And this is kind of like the mid-act turning point where now Ace is being tasked with doing something that, every other host would imagine and want to have happen to them in a fantasy world, but when actually presented with them is like, oh, they want me to execute someone live on TV. No, I don't have the metal to do that. And it really actually gets to Ace, and then that gets into the whole aspect that Evan says he's tried to do it himself, but he keeps regenerating. And it's like, oh, like Wolverine. He's like, Lala says like Wolverine. Like that she.
Yeah.
We're now reminded that she's in this story again.
Lala still exists.
when she says that line, and Evan's like, literally, yes, good job, Lala. And
yeah, which is perfect because that's her character. Like she is that unforgettable piece of content that has no real value in our lives. So, oh yeah, you're still here. Okay, thanks. And and again, that will play into Lala's actions later, right? Like so. Again, I feel like from a writing standpoint, all of our little threads are weaving together in a way that they're going to hit at the same time, and that's good. That's good when all the chaos hits, and so. Yeah, Lala's still there, and it's important because we're gonna be reminded of that fact later because she's gonna play a pivotal role at some point. We'll say that.
Kind of.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
I mean, we can't really spoil it, but I'll put it to you this way: there are payoff. Every character gets a payoff.
Yes, and not all of them are predictable either. They happen in a way with a twist, which is good. So at this point. Crap, where are we at? What page are you on? I'm looking at, I think I skipped ahead. I'm down at 55 right now.
Yeah, well, we're technically right there, because now we come back from like the commercial break, and things are not looking great, and all of a sudden, they get onto the topic of like, oh, so is this why, they ask Evan, is this why Anna left you? He's like, yeah, I told her that I was a wolf, and she left, but she wants to be alone. She doesn't want to deal with this stuff, and I don't begrudge her for anything. Like, he's trying to be very diplomatic about it. And then as a result, Anna, who has been missing in action for months since the breakup, finally comes to the studio,
She
no
shows up,
makeup,
yeah.
and the two of them just leave the stage, and so Ace has got just Lala with him, in dead air, and people start losing interest because these two go off, and essentially what ends up happening is Anna takes him to this other part of the building that's got like Evan runs off and Anna goes after him. Evan ends up finding this old recording room that's got a steel door, and he barricades himself inside. But Anna makes her way in because she sees the do not enter light going on and off.
Because
And
he does not want to hurt. He's about to change, and he's like,
yeah,
"What are you doing here? I don't. It's not safe, right?" And she thinks that he's just being dramatic. He's lost his marbles, and then we think that initially. Then she confronts him in the room, and why is she really there? What's this really about?
and
Script,
she
you
just
remember?
reads him the riot act, saying like, "You're ruining my reputation. Don't take me down with you."
Exactly.
People are
She's there
saying
for
that I'm the
herself.
reason that people are thinking that I'm the reason that you're falling apart when this has all happened on your own. And
Yeah.
the other part too is like they've been together for years, and Evan has established that he's been changing for years. So the question I'm raising is like, well, what has he been doing to either keep that from her all this time, right? Because
Does she
he
never?
has to
Yeah. Does
kind
she
of like
never go
not
to his? Does she never go to his brownstone? Does she never goes downstairs
like
and sees all the
at no
ghosts?
point in the years they're together she didn't spend one night with him, which happened to also be on a full moon, and he had to
Yeah.
change and do some sort of thing. Like, what are the odds of that, right? So
Well, there's a lot of rules here that you could easily write around them. And so you kind of got to, as a writer, go, is it worth getting into in this script, right? Like, I don't know. I'm okay with glossing over that. Like, yeah, you're totally valid point, script, but let's get to the action. I'm here to see a werewolf happen on a late night talk show and all hell to break loose, right? Like, so I'm okay. Like, let's go. We all know the rules to werewolves. She did a twist where it's like not just any silver bullet. It's this silver bullet. There's only one of them. It's been blessed by these witches, this coven or whatever, right? So I'm on board with that. So we're in the ballpark of werewolf lore and stuff, right?
yeah.
But I loved how when she confronts him, she's just like, "You SOB, you're ruining my career. Everyone thinks I'm the villain, and you're the poor guy who's just like having a, who's a victim of me." Like, and I loved all of that because she wasn't over the top like a bee about it, but she also was kind of mean because you could tell how sincere he's being, right?
Yeah,
He's
and
really
you can
reaching out.
tell. You can also tell that she is not the likable party of this relationship.
Yeah, yeah, and we've seen since the first second we saw Evan that he's not this prideful, arrogant, big-headed movie star, right?
No.
Not anymore. And really, I think the werewolf thing he might have been before the werewolf thing, but I think that it's grounded him. He's like, no, it's shown him like, and that's part of the message of this film is it's shown him like that how superficial all that other stuff is, that there's far more important things, there's far worse things than being unpopular, right? And so this was cool. Her confrontation was cool, and then he's like, you need to leave, and she's like confronting him, and then we see
He
the
starts-
first
Well, there's
starting of the change.
yeah, like you hear bones crunching, and then he starts growling. At the same time, Ace is freaking out because Evan is gone, and he's worried that the show is falling off. And while the ratings are falling off, that's when social media Stacy comes in and says, "Hey, check out the interactions here. People want to see this more. Keep running it. They're lauding after you, Ace, because they think you should deserve an Emmy for handling Evan and his crazy kookamini scene." And Ace then starts taking like Adderall and Xanax as like a 1-2 punch. And as he's chewing, the writer describes like the bone cracking matching up with the chewing of these pills that that Ace is
That was
taking.
so good.
And
That's so
it's
good.
all like
That's good
crossing
writing,
it
dude.
over. Yeah, it's all crisscrossing it over, and it's pretty cool aesthetic. And I'm like, oh, why weren't they doing more of this? This level of like, parallels and allowing for the reader to actually like get involved in this, as opposed to the hand holding that we've seen up until this point. And then eventually, like, Anna ends up kind of taking off really quickly.
And then around this point, Frankie shows up with the goat.
With the goat. Everybody thinks she's crazy.
She's like, "Get out of here, people! Get out of here!" And the whole audience is just like, "What?" And then who's it?
Tommy, the talent producer, handcuffs her to a rail next to the prop cart because
Yeah, because he's like she was good. Well, she was going for the fire alarm, and he's like,
Yeah.
and he stopped her, and he's like, "You're staying right here until the show's over." And she's like, and as a viewer, you're like, "No, she's like the only one that's like gets it," and she gets handcuffed, and now she's screwed. So I'm like, again, suspension building. This is great writing. I love it. He even used the fuzzy handcuffs from the props thing, like to do it.
Fuzzy
So
handcuffs, and then Sam gets this idea where she's like, "Okay, Tommy, the talent producer, you're in charge. I'll be right back." She heads over to Ronnie Ramirez, who's again the animal guy, and she asks him, "What do you have that we can use tonight?" And that's left open as like the cliffhanger type of thing for a few pages because Evan is or isn't transforming, and Ace and Lala are struggling to hold on to the show because they've got
Lala's not important anymore. She's there, but she's not keeping viewership there because so everything on social media is blowing up about the werewolf stuff.
everybody wants to know what's going to happen. Are we going to see Evan again? Is he going to transform? Is this real? Is this a stunt? Is this method acting? They don't know, but we get to the just after the mid-act point around page 60 or so, the werewolf alarm goes off, and I wish I'm lying to you when I say this, but there's actually a line in there, not verbally spoken, but it's written in the descriptive lines where they say it's wolfen time.
Instead, it's morphin time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it just made me eye roll because I'm like, oh, so they're playing on not just the Power Rangers, but also Morbius and all that other stuff. And
yeah, but that's what I mean. If this is a comedy, then fine. That's great. Say it that way.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's fun. It's fun. Like we're about to see some chaos erupt, and honestly, this is such a comedy at this point because it's kind of like it's just so chaotic. And it's so unbelievable, but yet you know he really is a werewolf and something's about to happen. And so it's like it's just good. It's a lot of build up, and I'm okay with it. So that's how I felt about it at this point in the script.
so and that actually ends up being the reveal. And we haven't gotten to the spoiler part yet because there's a whole nother aspect going on. But yeah, Evan turns into this 9'9", 900-pound werewolf, wolfman creature with human eyes.
It seems like the way I remember it described is he's a huge wolf with human eyes. That's it.
Yeah.
There's no like, it's not like
It's close to American Werewolf in London type of thing.
Yeah, it's more like you're a big wolf than you are half man, half wolf kind of thing. So it's not Teen Wolf style werewolf. It's just a big huge wolf and a dire wolf kind of thing. And so then we have the security guards. We haven't talked about them. They kind of made an appearance earlier, but now they're like walking around talking, doing their whole like I like the dialogue between the two security guys.
Well, they're just commentating on like basic stuff like why aren't
they're
male actors like masculine anymore, like Bruce Willis and Schwarzenegger and Stallone.
Yeah, they're us, dude. They're us. They're saying what we're thinking, right? And that's why I liked them. They're just like they're the what was that in the old Greek plays where there's the muse or whatever? It was like they're basically the audience. Yeah, and that's kind of what I feel like these two security guards were. And these poor guys, there was like a tall one and a little one, and they see was it Anna, the girlfriend, goes running by.
Yep.
And they're like, well, what the heck was that? And then they are the first two victims of our werewolf.
Yes.
And he bites both their heads off.
And he makes it to the main stage. And just as like he's face to face with Frankie, he then starts to get drowsy and drops, and we find out that Ronnie Ramirez has tranked him, and it worked. Yes. And then they affix him with some chains and some shock collars, and then put him back on the main.
A bunch of shock collars. I think they put shock collars on like all his legs. They just loaded him up.
All four legs and on his neck, and Sam's got the remote on it so that she can shock. She can shock them along with Ronnie, who's also got a cattle prod, and they put Evan as the Wolfman, well, not really Wolfman, but as the wolf on stage for Ace to interview. And that's where we're cutting off.
And again, suspend disbelief because it's 1,000-pound animal, right?
1,000-pound animal sitting between and sitting on either side of him is Lala and and then Ace.
Yeah. But again, it's okay. Like it doesn't need to be perfect. I'm not going to look for plot holes that are that small because it's a fun ride. If the ride's good, then I don't care that I saw one of the actors peek from stage left, right? Like it's okay. And so, yeah, we should probably leave it there. Yeah, so I think that without saying anything that would be spoiler, you will be happy with where this ends up. Like I didn't feel cheated or misled. It was great. It was a great third act. What about you?
I would say it's a good third act. It does deliver on action. You could probably predict some of the basic beats, but not the results of what happens with the characters.
Yep. That's fair.
It's really well formulated, so you actually can follow it. I think it comes a little later than expected because they really do kind of drag out certain aspects of it towards the end. Because this is a 99-page script, and really I think you could probably cut 15 pages out of it, and not lose
This
anything
should
of
be
importance.
this should be what 90 minutes long. I would think would be
Solid
fair.
90 minutes would be good for this, yeah. So
Yeah.
I mean, most of the I will say this, most of the padding of this script is the writer adding in certain narration that's not needed. Like if she cut a whole bunch of that stuff out, you'd probably have an 89, 90-page script and not lose
That's fair.
anything. So
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
fair.
there's that unnecessary part of the padding there. But I will say this: each of the characters have a distinguishing voice. I wish we got more of Frankie before we get to the change, because she has a pretty big part in the third act.
Yeah, just so
And
that we bonded more with her. I agree. It
yeah,
would have been
and
nice to
also
get a little bit
understood
more.
her motivation because right now she's definitely introduced as like the innocent thing, not yet corrupted by the industry, which is a trope. Which I mean, I don't fully believe
But
in,
she's
but
also
I understand.
she's not but she's not stupid naive, right? Like
No,
she's smart. She sees through all the BS right away, and I like that about her character. And she didn't girl boss really. Even Sam, who was the boss, didn't really girl boss. Wasn't getting any of those vibes from this at all. It was
no.
just like a bunch of crappy people making a crappy show that talked about crappy content, and then they get this guy on for whatever reason. He picked this show to do his werewolf reveal, and I think it's because Ace was such a piece of crap. He's like, that's the guy that'll pull the trigger on me. That's why he picked Ace, because
Yeah.
Ace seemed like the kind of guy who just for ratings would shoot a werewolf on screen, right? And end this poor guy's misery, because that's what he wanted. His whole goal, Evan just wanted to end his existence. And we can't go into spoilers about the ending, but it's like it all has a great message at the end, which I really like. And a lot of films don't do that anymore. It seemed like every film always had a message in the old days, but now it's like it's just content, right? And this felt like, and this is the narrative writer part of me, maybe, as I see that and I'm like, oh yeah, this is good. This is good. It all has a reason. It all comes to a conclusion, and it's all at the end of it. You can walk away from the film and go, yeah, that's a lesson I need to be reminded of in life, right? Like it's good. It
Oh
was a
no,
good lesson.
this story has a point to be made, not just regarding people who make content like this talk
People who
show,
consume
but the
content,
people
yeah.
who consume it as well, and how, in part, it's a vicious cycle where they both feed each other, essentially like non-nutritious content, and you end up getting like brain rot out of it. And it's actually done with quite a level of not necessarily talent, but definitely a level of thought. Because this does, like, when you're done reading it, you kind of come across and you think, okay, everything is very specific. That this woman took a lot of notes while she was working for possibly a number of very terrible television shows in this area, and she managed to put them all together in a way that works. And then the other part too is you using the allegory of the wolf, the transformation, the celebrity that decides that their sins have caught up with them. They're coming home to roost, and how does that deal with it? And what type of effect does that have on everybody around them when they try to make a change on their own without seeking proper guidance and help from professionals? Instead, they seek the very people that enable those changes for a resolution, as opposed to the people that can actually help them.
Right.
And
Yeah.
all of that kind of comes through here. And I have to say, I was actually rather impressed, because you don't necessarily see many scripts, especially ones that talk about the industry itself, with that level of understanding. Because this is almost like a goodbye letter. It's like someone saying, okay, I got into the industry because I thought I had glitz and glamour, which a lot of people foolishly think. And then when you see what it actually is, it's like you just don't want to be a part of it anymore. And
That's true.
and
I didn't
that's
think
kind
about
of
it that
what
way, but
this story is
feels
trying
like,
to say.
yeah.
It's like saying the breakup letter to Hollywood, or to the entertainment industry in general, or at least this variation of it. Which, in my opinion, I'm surprised those types of shows actually exist and have lasted as long as they have, and really they should just be fade away because they're not nurturing to what this industry is built upon, which is art itself, like good art that connects with people, art that reminds people why life is awesome. Shows like that don't do that.
We need to be. I'll just say this: we need to be elevated culturally in a lot of ways. It's just we've been circling the drain, and there are exceptions. Thankfully, we have these ones that come out and stand out. And we're like, this is great, but that needs to be the status quo instead of the exception. So, hopefully, we talked about it earlier. Hopefully, we pull out of that nosedive and we get mainstream becomes good stream again.
One can hope. With that being said, I don't think it's going to be any surprise for those listening, but is this a green light or a pass for you?
Are we supposed to hide that along the way? I would
like to a degree, a little anticipation. But sometimes you get something that generates enough excitement where you're like, you just can't hold it in.
No, I think Madison did a fantastic job. I think that she worked really hard on this. I think she rewrote this and polished it. I have no major beefs with it. There's only one thing that I told you about that I wanted to talk about. This is my only negative, and it is a nitpick, and I know it's a nitpick, and it's something that has become a pet peeve of mine because I see it more and more frequently, and or at least I've noticed it more, and now I can't unnotice it, whether it's on Reddit or YouTube comments, or now because it showed up in a frickin' script that gets rewritten and written and rewritten again by its writer. Because if you've ever written something that you really want to do a good job on, you will rewrite it 10 or 12 times. And so I'm like, there's no excuse that she missed this. Hold on. I had it set up. I got to find the page. I know it's down here. And that is the flagrant misuse of question marks where there are no questions being posed. I know it's funny and I know I'm being kind of petty, but the problem with this is my adult brain goes, yes, but if we don't nip this in the bud, where will we be in 10 years, right? When we have a whole nother generation that sees other people misusing question marks, so therefore they use it. And the biggest thing I see online is people putting a question mark on an idea or a statement that exhibits misunderstanding or unknowing something. So you'd say like, I don't know why. I don't know why that's there. And they put a question mark at the end of that. And it's like, no, you're making a statement. You don't know why, or you don't understand. I don't understand. Question mark? No, there's no question mark.
Or the whole, Evan's still not here? That's not really a question mark. Question. It's a statement.
Yeah. I had it highlighted, and now I can't find it. I should have been doing this while you were talking. But, okay, yeah, here it is. So go to script page 67, PDF page 69. And it's warm-up guy says, hey, where'd you get that? Question mark. Okay, good. You were supposed to turn in your phones? Question mark. No, you were supposed to turn in your phones is a statement, not a question.
Yeah.
Then you go down a couple more, and then we have warm-up guy into headset. Guys, we need some guidance out here. Question mark. No, just we need some guidance out here. That's a statement. Yeah. Is Evan coming back or what? That's a question. So good. Question mark. Then we go down a few more lines. On Ace, processing the wild tale the PA just told him. It can't be true? Question mark. No, it can't be true is a statement. So these are all, and I'm like, oh, and so I love this script, Madison. I know you'll probably never listen to this. I love your script, but on this topic of flagrant misuse of question marks, knock it off. Just because you're confused, I'm not saying this to Madison, I'm saying to all the other people out there. If you're confused about something when you make a statement, it's okay. You still put a question. You still put a period. You don't put a question mark. If you're confused, you're confused. That's fine. That doesn't mean you ask a question. You're not asking a question. And I don't know why this is becoming so common, and I'm going to stop because this is dumb stuff to talk about. But it just bugged me, and I'm like, 3 of them on one page really caught me off guard, so I highlighted them. I'm like, knock it off. Like, these are all statements, not questions. So, yeah, I don't know. Do you have any nitpicks like that? Any things that really pet peeves that you have on writing that you're seeing trends of?
Other than the narration and the scene descriptions, that bothers me because I don't need that. I grew up reading books. I know how dialogue and action.
Your brain fills it in. Your brain fills in
make those connections. The fact that it is a growing trend really terrible because I do not want to lower my writing to that because it might create a bad habit. Just like with some people that are relying on AI to kind of fill in certain gaps with their stories. It's like you're not exercising the very muscle you need in order to succeed in this industry, which is your brain. And yeah, it's pretty sad. And then to your point, I mean, part of me thinks is that they were intending to make some of these questions, like for instance, you were supposed to turn in your phones. It should have been, weren't you supposed to turn in your phones? Because that's the question. Like you have to flip those two words and change the conjunction
Oh,
or add a
gotcha.
conjunction.
Yeah.
So yeah, like it's just. I think it comes to the
That,
fact that as much polishing as this writer may have done in order to hone down the script, they probably needed to take a step away for a couple weeks and then reread it within the same context,
yeah, or
with a
have
new set of eyes or different context, so that they could solve those problems.
and it's always good to have your A team. Like a novelist, a lot of novelists will have an A and a B team, right? Like your A team is your closest circle. They see your first and roughest drafts, and then you have a B team that. So I don't know how script writers do it, but at least whoever's in your inner circle like should have caught some of those things. But we're nitpicking here. Like I love this script, and that's just me catching on one page, 3 question marks that shouldn't have been there, which is just something I see. It's stupid. This is a green light for sure. I should have put some more thought into this and been like, this is who I'd cast and this is whatever, but I didn't go that far with it. But I just think that this is a fun, great script that could have a very small budget and really, really pay the studio big money for something that, I mean, think about our set. We have the brownstone, we have the studio, and we have a CGI werewolf at some point. That's it. There is like nothing else to this script. Like this is not very expensive to make this film.
No, you could be real. I would say screw the CGI wolf. Just get a practical one like what they did with Underworld, because that's a guy in a suit. Well, number of guys in suits and on stilts. Just really good makeup job, more convincing,
Yeah.
easier to interact with. Also, a great deal cheaper at the end of the day.
Who would be a good smaller studio that would do something like this? You think would do a good job with it?
A24, Blumhouse.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they've got the resources for it. They're familiar with the lower budgets. This would be right up their alley. Because I would greenlight this too, because the premise is good. The writer actually has a focused message that is, it's not an ideological message. It's basically one of like, this is a commentary on the difference between art, gossip, and content. And it's not
the heart of this
the
heart of this
simple one.
the heart of this is be a good person. That's really the heart of this message. And
Yeah.
and I'm like, we don't have enough of those. And that's probably why this came up at 36, because people were like, this isn't edgy enough, right? And I'm like, no, this is what we need. This is edgy now, because there's so much of the edginess everywhere else. To not do edgy is the new edgy. You know what I'm saying? I know that was a word salad there, but it totally makes sense. Just play it back. So that, I think, yeah, green light this. I would green light it. I would give her a high five. I think she worked hard on this. I think this deserves to be made, and she deserves to get paid. This would be a fantastic film. I would love to watch this. Release it in September, right before October, Halloween and stuff. And this would be a fun comedy slash. Do they have a term for? Is there a genre term specified for a comedy that's also 20% horror? Like, do they have something like that? What would you call it?
They just call them horror comedies. But like this one here, because it's so dry, listen, for the first half, you're not going to laugh at much of anything at all, because it's actually played pretty straight. And unless there's something extra that's done with the direction or the cast, it's going to feel like a pretty straightforward kind of Studio 60 tone thing, instead of like the Gary Shandling show, which I think would be much better for it. But because like on the page, it's played pretty straight. The absurdity does not come across on a level that your average audience member would laugh. People who are inside the industry would probably laugh at it, because they're like, look at all these failures trying to put on a show that's terrible. But that only works for the very small audience of people who work in the industry. Like you have to bridge that gap. That's why something like the Gary Shandling show and Curb Your Enthusiasm kind of did really well, because they were about the industry to various degrees, but they humanized it in a very different way. This show doesn't give you much. This script doesn't give you much room for that. It's not until Evan changes into the wolf that some of the comedy kind of comes out, and you can see the flaws of a lot of the characters front and center far more vividly than before. And the tone does change at that point. But yeah,
I just feel like calling it a drama isn't fair, because it's not that serious either. It's just in this weird spot where it's like half drama, comedy until we get to the third act, and then it turns
Well,
into
the
this,
drama is not the same as like a melodrama. Like that's the other part you have to kind of remember. Like sometimes a lot of people when they think drama, they're like, oh, a lot of dramatic stuff happens in a very kind of superficial or grandiose way. That's not usually the case. Like your cop procedurals, like on television, those are still constituted as like an hour-long drama, right?
oh,
And
like Blue Bloods or something like
like Blue
that.
Bloods or The Rookie
Yeah.
or anything like that's just your basic. If it's an hour-long show, most likely classified as a drama. Then it might have something with a little bit of action to it. You'll never get an hour-long comedy, sadly, even though I think those would be a huge hit if with the right team involved. So yeah, like that's kind of where it's at this point.
So what about you then? So would you greenlight this?
Yeah. I greenlight it because I like the concept and I like what the writer is actually saying with this story. Like this is like, yeah, I know some people comment on, oh, we don't want movies with a message. Well, the whole reason you have stories is because someone is trying to share something they've learned about life with you. That is the message. That's just the core concept of it. I'm sharing something I've learned about life with you.
Yeah. But there's a difference between being preached to and
Yeah,
being,
because
that's not what this is at
again,
all.
she's not telling you what is right or what is wrong. She's saying this is what I learned and this is how, and I'm sharing it. It's a sharing of information. It's yours to take and do with as you please, as opposed to being preached at, saying this is how things should be.
Right.
There's none of that.
I would
That's
say
very different. That's propaganda.
Yeah. That's what, and that's the thing. So not the message, but a message. I mean, even the Princess Bride has a message about
Yeah.
love, and like so that's okay. And I felt like this was a breath of fresh air. And we had some great scripts last year. The last one we did was okay. There's one we did. I can't remember what it was. I've already forgotten it, but it was just really bad. I hated it. And this was fun. I had a great time with this script. It read real easy, read real fast. I agree it could be cut down because of the extra exposition that we have, but if it boils out to a 90-minute film, I'm on. This is great. Don't overstay your welcome. Get in, have fun, get out. And I think this would, like I said, I think the budget would be easy to do, and the studio could make a ton of money. I think this is,
I think it'd be done for under $2 million easily.
yeah, and it's a quote unquote original idea, right? Like nothing's totally original anymore. But what I'm saying is, have we seen anything anywhere in the realm of this like this in a long, long time? And I would say no. So this would be great for people to be like, man, did you hear that? This would be a good word of mouth movie where people would be like, they would refer all their friends and family to it because it'd be a sleeper hit. It'd be like, no, this is really good. Go check it out.
If it ended up getting like a theatrical run and it stayed in theaters long enough, yeah, this could do well. Chances are, sadly, a movie of this type might go straight to streaming, video on demand at best. Which again, I mean, that's the foolishness of the studio system at this point. Like 25 years ago, this would have been in theaters during the Halloween season. Or in maybe late this season, like January, just because it would stand out among the direct that normally comes out during this quarter, and I think that would be to its advantage. But these days here, I would say, listen, to the writer, to Madison, I would say I really hope that someone does put this script into production and that it actually gives you what you've wanted for a while, because you've been in the industry for at least 10 years that I know of, based on your dossier. And, the credits you have are very slim, and that's the tragic aspect, because you've definitely got some skill here. And I hope the people that voted for this on the blacklist are still in contact with you, because it'd be great to see this brought to life. And those are my thoughts on it here before we close out. Any final thoughts for you, man?
Nope. I think I've said it all. I love it. I greenlight it, and I hope it gets made. I hope in a year or two we're talking about the trailer when it comes out, because it deserves it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, with that being said, I want to thank everyone out there for all your wonderful support and listening. We are going to be going on again now. Before we end the show, we are going to check in with the audience, because we have a new feature that we do here on the show, which is the audience gets to determine, like they get to vote on, would this script be a green light or a pass? And as I've been going through here, we actually have a split from the people that have voted. So 50% of the patrons that voted voted to greenlight it, and 50% voted to pass on the script. So that is kind of interesting. So you and I both greenlight it for slightly different reasons, but we both thought it'd be good to go. But the patrons out there were split down the middle, 50-50. And that's pretty interesting. So I think I like this little aspect to the show because I want to get more of you guys involved. And as a thank you for your support. So after having listened to the show, why don't you go back to the initial posts and tell us, would you greenlight this or would you pass? Let's get more involvement out there. And remember, guys, if you are part of the Patreon, on Mondays, you find out what the next script is we'll be reviewing. Same rules apply. Give it check it out. Give it a vote, greenlight or a pass, and we'll discuss it here on the show. And with that being said, TJ, I want to thank you for coming by. It's always a pleasure having you here on the show. We'll have you back again real soon. And in the meantime, guys, have a wonderful weekend. And never forget, when it comes to great story, it all starts with the script.